Welcome to another episode of the Tinfoil Fedoras. We are the Tinfoil Fedoras. Let's be women. Men can be women now.
No.
Wow, sexist.
I want to be a strong male leader.
Why would you want to represent men? Men are the worst.
Because we're not.
Oh, it's very misogynist of you to say that you're not the worst as a man. There aren't many options for women, are there?
Isabella, Spain. Maria the First for Portugal. Maria Theresa from Austria. Byzantines are really bad.
That's extremely sexist. How dare you?
Yeah, well, there's also Catherine from Russia. Russia's pretty good. All right, I'll play Queen Elizabeth.
I want elephants.
But they're military.
I mean, so is Russia.
All these women leaders are angry. England's a war civ too.
Interesting.
War driven.
Let's do it. Let's be a couple of angry women.
Trying to rule the world. This is the standard these days.
Today we're going to be talking about women and those who think they're women. Not only are they extremely threatening to real women in a lot of ways, you know, trying to take the likeness of women and say that they're better than women or making women a mockery. They are now trying to represent trans women because Dylan got invited to the White House and got to have a one-on-one conversation with Mr. Joe Biden. And if that is not a poor excuse for representation, I don't know what is.
When you're the bar is set as high as someone like Eli Ehrlich, you got to work really hard, you know? Yeah, I don't have a problem with people being trans. I have a problem with transgenderism taking over society and culture at large.
I like Blair White a lot. I think she's got a good head on her shoulders, and I don't mind calling Blair White she, her, because her whole platform is about like integrating and not disrespecting women as they are.
It's all about proportionality, right? I'm a broken record. I always go back to this. Why are people that are 0.5% of the population having influence like bigger than the people that make up the vast majority of the population? What is going on there? You know, because when you see that, it makes you think maybe the idea here is that there needs to be more of it. The government's trying to push more of it.
You know, as a biological woman, I have felt insignificant to other women since puberty, right? We are kind of groomed with this sense of competition. First, it started with the Suicide Girls, and then it started with the e-girls and the cosplayers all getting boob jobs and nose jobs. And those girls already made normal women feel insignificant because, like, wow, maybe I should get a boob job. Maybe I should get a nose job. Like, that was bad enough when biological women were doing all this stuff to their bodies and making other women feel inferior, warping men's perception of what a woman should look like. But now we have literal men doing that and more and advertising that they will be better women than women.
Yeah, well, you know, women just need to step their game up, I guess.
But guess what? I can't afford surgery. I can't afford a boob job. I don't want silicone in my body.
Well, maybe you should have been born a biological man.
Male privilege, female privilege. What is this? What does that constitute as? Is that male privilege if a man can literally be a woman better than a woman can, according to him?
Yeah.
So men do have all the privilege, but only when they're pretending to be women, because regular men don't have privilege, apparently.
I don't know. It's all semantics to me. I don't know.
I mean, women have been feeling bad about themselves for a long time, ever since Photoshop started fixing all the pictures, you know, magazines and all that. It's been going on for years, fixed up makeup propaganda. And it has affected my sense of self and self-worth as a woman, especially now. And the apologists will be like, well, maybe you should have some more confidence.
Yeah, have you ever tried confidence?
Right.
Like, you can't make it fake it. They're so confident that they can brazenly tell everyone that biology isn't real. Yeah, I just don't understand. If gender is a spectrum and it's not about biological traits, women's breasts are biological traits. So what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah, so my point is that completely natural women feel very like undervalued compared to the women that have surgeries and stuff, boob jobs or whatever. I mean, obviously I don't speak for every woman, but I can talk about myself, and it makes me feel insignificant. It makes me feel uglier than them because they have created this standard of quote unquote beauty that is unrealistic because it's fake.
You think that the industries, all this plastic surgery, you think they don't know the impact they have on biological women? All it's going to do is pressure women to get more of those services, and they make more money from it anyway.
We'll see what happens in 20 years when those silicone babies pop.
I've always said about the idea of like AI girlfriends and stuff. Well, all that's going to do is make women feel like they have to compete even more because now they're competing against an AI, right? Like, trans women are being the AI waifus instead. But, that's bigotry. No matter how you shake it, it is not good. But yeah, I've got a theory. I think that when you talk about misandry and misogyny, I think that it's pretty damn misogynistic or misandrist to prefer your own sex sexually over the others, and also to believe that you can be the equivalent of the other gender while being the same sex, and that you could be as much of one or better than one of the opposite sex. So like you could be a better woman as a biological male or an equivalent. I think that that's pretty misogynistic and or misandrist in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. That means that the most misogynist and misandrist people would be the LGBT.
I don't think that that's that crazy of a concept. I think it's just a tough pill for people to swallow.
People aren't going to like that we say that, but you just got to think about it.
It runs contrary to all the narratives and all the, the ways you're supposed to think about this kind of thing.
How can a biological man be a better woman than I can? But we aren't replacing women. Trans women aren't replacing women. You're just, jealous, or you just have internal misogyny, is what they say.
So, okay, yeah, tell me how your $30,000 coochie isn't better then, if you're not replacing women. If you're not saying that yours is better, what are you trying to say? You're not trying to replace that. You're telling men they should prefer that over a woman, right? So what does that mean?
Yep, and if you support Dylan Mulvaney, that means that you support this threatening, toxic rhetoric.
It's going too far. I am an alarmist. I'm that guy. Look at me, Bill Hicks. Start over. The experiment didn't work.
And honestly, a lot of these poor children that are getting experimented on will be lucky if they survive to 40. And it's so ironic that they try to gaslight the public, gaslight parents, and be like, oh, if you don't let your child transition, then that means that they are more likely to kill themselves. That means you are causing violence. Like, you really think that in 20, 30 years, when everyone is just dying from medical complications, that's not a contributor? Or God forbid, with the detransition movement, all those people, I want to know the statistics on unaliving of those poor kids.
Of detransitioners?
Yeah.
Well, I could probably find that for you. Give me a moment. Well, there's two different things right beside each other. One of them says new study shows transgender people who receive gender-affirming surgery are less likely to experience psychological distress and suicidal ideation. And the one right below it says sex reassignment doesn't work. Here's the proof that the suicide rate increases of people who undergo gender-affirming surgery. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rises up to 20 times that of comparable peers. And this is a study that was extended over 30 years and conducted in Sweden. But let's see what the counter study says. See, this says that it found that transgender people who received one or more gender-affirming surgical procedures had a 42% reduction in the odds of psychological distress and a 44% reduction in the odds of past year suicidal ideation. So which is right? So somebody's lying here.
Right.
I'm not gonna go too much out on a limb here. I'm not gonna try to poison the well too much. I would venture to guess that the ones who are trying to deny our biological proclivities probably have a harder time than those that don't.
Oh, I can found a pantheon. Fertility rates, don't want that. Oh, whoops. Freudian slip. I'll let Ethiopia deal with the barbarian then. Oh yeah, I'm right next to this green fellow.
I'm next to this green fellow.
I can get 2 cotton, incense, and a fur. Oh, there's another camp right there. What the just wait till he gets a taste of feminism. Okay. If you're saying your designer $30,000, you know what, is better than mine, you are literally doing the thing that women have been fighting against forever. Degrading women down to their sexual organs. Like,
empiricism is bigotry, okay?
Says who?
Rational thought, just like math is racist. Well, logic is bigotry, okay? Stop trying to use those things that support the patriarchy, okay? I thought that you were supposed to be a woman.
Of course.
You see how easy the woman just gets usurped by this crap? Like, is transgenderism a mental illness or not? If the general consensus is that transgenderism is a mental illness, that means it needs treatment.
Yeah,
like
not affirmations.
If someone affirmed depression, where would that lead people? Why are we affirming people's mental illness? Why are we saying, like, accept your mental illness? We don't tell people who are psychotic, now you're equating trans people to serial killers. No, I'm equating trans people to mental illness.
it's not a mental illness. Okay, if it's not a mental illness, then why is it crippling body dysphoria to the point where you need to have surgeries in order to be yourself?
Let's just break it down even more than that. Like, if the idea here is that if mental well-being is some sort of chemical balance, then why do you need hormones?
Yep.
Like, if you're supposed to be if it's not a mental illness, then why do you, if that means that you're saying that you are chemically balanced in your brain, okay? If that's the case, then why are you saying you need hormones? Because if you are chemically balanced, then you're telling your body to go outside of that chemical balance, so you are making yourself mentally ill by changing the chemicals that your brain produces. If you're saying that it is a mental illness, then why are we validating it? Why aren't we getting treatment for it, right? Yeah. So it's either, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that this is a mental illness, but I don't want treatment, I want to be affirmed. And you also can't say that it's not a mental illness, but I want something that's going to change my brain chemistry. Because by doing that, you're saying you want to disrupt what you're claiming to be your chemically properly balanced brain. So which one is it? Or is that too much logic?
Yeah, we really just need to stop rewarding mental illness.
Well, we got to determine if it's mental illness first. That's the whole thing. Like, is it a mental illness or not?
Yeah, because I've called it a mental illness, and my quote-unquote friends have laughed in my face. But then other people say, oh, well, these people need treatment and blah, 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 blah. If we're trying to break the boundaries of what men and women should be, then why are men doing things, injecting themselves with female hormones? Like, that should be the trump card. If it's not about science, if it's about how you feel, then how come you have to alter your body or your hormones scientifically? Why do you have to rely on Big Daddy Pharma?
Yeah, why have you got to change your biology if sex and gender are different, and sex is biology and gender is something different? Why, when you identify as a different gender, why do you make biological changes to fit that? It's so simple. If it's not a mental illness, they shouldn't need hormones.
Yeah,
it's not mean the brain's functioning properly.
Are you a biologist, is what they'll say. Yeah, you're not a biologist either. And let's say I was a biologist, you'd still say I'm a TERF or whatever.
Let's say that we both went to 8th grade life sciences class. And we learned that men and women have different hormones.
Let's say I watched Mr. Rogers when I was in kindergarten and he knew what a man and a woman was.
Yeah, I watched Bill Nye and he says gender's a spectrum.
This woman from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, please give it up for Rachel Bloom.
What the?
Harder voice. My vagina has its own voice.
What?
Sometimes I do a voice for my vagina. Please don't tell me I'm the only one who does that. 'Cause my sex junk is so much more than either.
What the?
They have some butt stuff.
What? Bill Nye is funding this? Bill Nye, no.
French treasure.
How did I miss this?
I'm down for anything. Give someone new a handy, then give yourself props.
What?
Smart. Did you learn gay in college?
Sexuality's a spectrum, everyone is on it. Even you might like it if you sit up on it, drag.
Oh my God, what? This is from 5 years ago. Oh my God.
I told you, it's cringe.
This guy looks like he's about to flash everybody.
Sad clown, Skyping via satellite.
Damn Skippy home slice, sing it with
Damn Skippy home slice. I called it. I want to see the audience. Are there children here? What?
with lots of schmear.
Better than bagel and lox with lots of schmear. Is that a wait?
Yes.
She really just Bill Nye. Why?
That's exactly the right message, Rachel. Nice.
What? He literally says that's exactly the right message. What happened to you?
Give it up for DJ Seahorse.
It's so cringe. Now you tell me it's not mental illness. It's the cringiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's legitimately one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
It's because Bill Nye was an icon to children.
I know.
I can see the argument now. Well, he was all for kids in the 90s, but now he knows that his audience has grown up, so he's grown up with his audience, hee hee. It's a new adult version of Bill Nye, just like the adult version of Scooby-Doo is Velma, okay? Bigot.
Like, it's just horrible.
The
like,
message.
I don't just mean the message, but I mean, like, it's not music. Even if it weren't about such a cringy subject, everything else about it's just bad, too.
And we're just promoting sexuality to anyone and everyone. You know who promotes sexuality for everyone and anyone? Eli Ehrlich.
Maps.
It's not sexual liberation, ladies. We got sexual liberation in the 70s, okay? And guess what happened? A lot of people got STDs and died from that. If that's your lifestyle, you're going to get STDs. And you're not going to find a partner that respects you, who cares for you. They're going to be like, I can do whatever I want. I'm untouchable. Well, I'm 20 and I got my whole life ahead of me. Blah. Like, okay, well, you're untouchable until you're, caught in the dark under a bridge where no one can save you because you've ostracized and emasculated every single man.
Or, the men who are acting like women. Hey, it's okay. Go to this lesbian club with me. It's totally safe. You don't have to worry about men there. And then they, violate you with because you trusted the lesbian trans woman.
Yep.
Because it's not a man, definitely not a man. Hashtag.
It does happen.
That's exactly what Eli Ehrlich did. Eli Ehrlich had been accused of assaulting, essaying multiple women by calling himself a lesbian and going to lesbian clubs. And, it's brutal what he did to some of these girls. Brutal. It's straight up the R word, brutal. Yep. Made them bleed brutal. So that's what I'm saying. And all those girls are probably gullible. Oh, and tolerant, right? Oh, yeah, it's a trans woman. You're part of us. We're all trans lesbians. But it's really a dude. It's really a dude. It's a dude.
Yep.
At some point, something has to change. This cannot continue. What does progress even mean anymore,
I know. This is supposed to be being progressive. No, we're being regressive. We're making modern Frankensteins out of people.
Yeah, we're butchering people and calling that progress.
This is how much women are being destroyed. If you want to try to argue that women are still respected in society, tell me why people are trying to use brain dead women as literal baby factories, using their bodies to birth children while they're brain dead.
Yeah, it's almost like you're using a woman for her body. That's almost like objectification. I thought women didn't want people to do that. If you're literally using a woman's body as an object for your birthing mechanism that doesn't even have the ability to stop you, that's objectification. And that's not choice.
Yeah, I know. That's not pro-choice. And don't you dare say it's pro-life, because the woman is not alive. It's horrible is what it is. It's disgusting and horrible. And when that woman...
Yeah, and when these types of operations are being done publicly and openly, if this is what's supposedly, I'm not saying it is, but if this is what's supposedly socially acceptable to talk about in the public, what's going on behind closed doors that you don't see?
Yep.
What are the secret things that are going on involving babies and the way that babies are born and harvested and used for parts and all that kind of stuff?
And that is a thing. Just look at Sandra Bullock talking about how she, used, how do I say this in YouTube terms? The extra skin that is taking off of infant boys and using particles of that to inject into her face to look younger.
With microneedling.
With microneedlings. And, by the way, if you like us popping off like this, please subscribe to this channel and this video, because we will talk to you more about the crazy stuff that happens to children as well.
Yep. We're trying to build a niche to where we can talk about these things that other people won't talk about in more direct terms. That's what we want to do, because it's absolutely absurdity that we have to dodge this topic to be able to talk about something so heinous going on.
Yep.
It's absurd, and like all these people on YouTube that act like they're for the movement and for the message, they don't talk about this stuff directly. They beat around the bush, or they'll use terminology that doesn't directly address the problem. We want to address the problem. We want to talk about these things head on. All the issues, all of them. I kind of blame men.
Yep.
And I blame men because we let this happen. Men were in charge. Men were really masculine, strong, leaderly. Men were in charge. But we let the reins go. Men are built to be leaders. I'm not saying that men should be dictators, but men are built to be leaders. We're on Rumble as well. You can find us there. You can also find us on Twitter. Because when you take the masculinity out of leadership, look what happens to the culture at large.
Yep. They're initiators. They're fighters. Men are literally fighting to be women now.
Yeah,
Because
they're
they're
fighting
so,
women to be women.
and the other men are so emasculated that they think that supporting this trans movement is pro-women. That's how backwards that is. And women, you're so freaking brainwashed because people will gaslight you and tell you it's internalized misogyny or whatever. If you're against this, you think this is a good thing and that these trans women will help you along the line. Guess what? They won't. They're trying to pretend that they're pro-woman so you get on the bandwagon so they can get in the White House with Joe Biden. But trans women like that, they're not out to help you. They're out to usurp you.
You know I'm not a big Ben Shapiro fan. I'm okay with him. He's whatever, but I'm not a big fan of him. But he's used that ever since. He's always been like, and this is why I will never be able to look at the trans movement as something that's inherently safe, because I have literally been threatened and physically affronted by a trans woman with a masculine, strong, muscular hand that could have probably hurt me. Look at all these people in the trans community that are coming out as predators.
Yep.
It's not an accident.
Not at all.
That's not a coincidence. Biological men are intrinsically, inherently stronger than women.
Biology is not sexist any more than Mother Nature is sexist.
The problem is that these men that are claiming to be women are using their masculine traits to dominate the landscape. That's what's so misogynist about this, is that the biological men that are claiming to be women know that their biological traits make it to where they can dominate women the same way that the women say the patriarchy is dominating them.
Yep.
Using the same tactics, they are doing the things that women say that biological males and men do. The trans women that are biological men are doing it to take power away from women. That is misogyny.
Yep.
So how
Leave
is
a
trans,
logical, legitimate argument for that in the comments.
like how can a trans woman respect women if they believe that they belong in the same places where women, even if it makes women uncomfortable?
You mean the
How
kitchen?
can yeah, locker rooms, bathrooms.
Basically, right now, we're tiptoeing the line. We're on the edge, man. We're about to fall as a society. Right now, we need to take a few steps back. What do you mean take a few steps back? I thought this was all regression. I don't understand. Logic is hard. Is that fluoride get into your brain, honey?
What it means is that just because you're driving quickly in a direction doesn't mean you're not driving off a cliff. We don't know the destination. You know, what is the idealized world here? What are we trying to create? What is this trying to be? What's the plan? Like, what is this supposed to amount to, huh? What is the end goal?
Libertarianism, where everyone can just do what they want.
No, you can't. No, libertarians are right-wingers. I don't even know. I guess it's social Marxism. I guess I don't really know what's supposed to happen with this. I don't know what the end goal is. That's why in my opinion, I think that they're just trying to destroy men. I think the purpose of this is to destroy the masculine male and then destroy women right after it.
Yep, we're just destroying the human race. Maybe it really is that simple, guys. That the P3DO corporate elites are just trying to destroy the human race. What if that really is it? Then what?
Then you're a bigot for suggesting and you're a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Just because you say it doesn't make it true.
Give me a logical argument as to why we're wrong.
Because your words are violence.
Well, Belgrade wants feminism, okay? Women back in the day, first wave feminism that were actually fighting for equal rights, the right to vote, you know, the right to have bodily autonomy and all that. This is not what they wanted. You're actually insulting women who actually were really hurt over fighting for equal rights. I'm not against the LGBT. I know people lost their lives at the Stonewall riots because gay people wanted to be married and have a free life or whatever, and that's fine. But freaks are hiding in the LGBT. You need to accept it. The faster you accept it and get out of your little bubble, your own delusions in your own head, the faster that we can have just healthy, normal gay adults and we can all fight together against the freaks. Let children try out being healthy gay adults first. Why do you need to turn them into Frankensteins?
It's profitable.
We tell women that you can't get a boob job till you're 18. 18-year-old women shouldn't get a boob job because it makes girls without boob jobs feel insecure and inferior, blah, blah, blah. You can have your opinions about that. But like, kids can't smoke till they're 18. Why can you have hormones and these double mastectomies when you're, what, 16?
And why is it okay for this culture to tell biological men that they're allowed to choose their breast size whenever they want, but women have to just deal with what they have and they face the social pressure growing up of their breast growing, and then they can then they have to wait and deal with all the trauma that might come along with them not being able to make changes they might want to make to their bodies. So like we're literally giving preferential treatment there over women to biological men. Because, well, you got to give them the hormones early or else they won't develop, and you got to give them the right things so they feel affirmed in themselves. Well, yeah, but we don't ever talk about women dealing with that. I mean, I know this is kind of a weird topic, but we don't ever talk about, teenage girls that are like really well endowed, picked on by people and sexualized really early on. Exactly. We don't talk about that as a bad thing.
I'm an example of that, for sure. I mean, it's personal, but yeah, that happens. And it happens to a lot of young women. And I have body dysphoria, but no one gives a fuck about me.
What'll happen instead is a trans kid, they'd say, well, we'll get you some hormones and we can make your breasts whatever size you want by the time you're 18.
Or we can just get rid of them. Imagine, I had horrible body dysphoria back then. I still have body dysphoria now from scars, but back then I had horrible body dysphoria because I was a well-endowed 14-year-old girl. If I went into my therapist crying my eyes out, I hate my boobs, I hate them, because I did cry. I cried a lot about it because I was sexualized and I was groomed and I was always looked at by P3DOs, right? Everything did hurt and I did have body dysphoria and it was crippling. And I cried every time I had to go bra shopping. If I had gone into a gender-affirming then I would not even have my breasts at all today.
Yeah, and it's insane. Like the fact that all you would have had now, if that were that position, all you have to do is say that you're actually a boy.
Even worse. I go in and say, I hate my boobs. They make me feel horrible about myself. Everyone looks at me funny and I'm not even ready to have sex yet. And they say, what if they say, well, what if you're a boy?
Yeah,
what if they put the idea in my head, right? When I'm 14 and I'm
yeah, think about the logic about what girl in their right mind wouldn't want boobs like that?
That's all it takes these days.
Think about that. It's lunacy.
Do no harm.
Imagine telling a teenage girl that she might be a boy because she gets picked on because of the size of her breasts. Oh man, if I have a daughter, I don't want to have a daughter. I really don't.
I don't even know if I want to have children at all these days.
Like I will not tolerate someone victimizing my child. I don't even have a kid yet, and thinking about this is making me angry. Oh man. How is this a discussion? Why is this a topic? Why do we even have to talk about this?
I don't know how it got here. We need to take a step back. Women, you need to get your head out of your ass, and you need to stand up for yourselves, stand up for other women. And I feel like it comes from this deep-seated insecurity because you feel like you want to fight with other women. So you're fighting other women about trans women. If you say, oh, I hate J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling is an advocate for you more than any of these trans women are.
Yeah, she hates men. Y'all want to talk about she's against you. She's more against me. I'm not trying to sit here and stand for her because I certainly think that she's in the wrong. I don't think she's right about some things. I think that her perspective on some things is very off. But if you're talking about protecting women, she wants to protect biological women because she understands the predatory nature of the biological male, especially the biological male who's going to find his way into women's spaces. Seriously, any women that are listening to this, be honest with yourself. Would you really be okay if a biological male came into your bathroom while you were peeing? Like, look through the crack to see if there was somebody in the stall or not? And you saw a biological male looking at you?
You're inciting violence right now. You're trying to make women think of trans women as the enemy. And there's some trans women that haven't done anything to anyone. They're just really insecure, okay? I do think of the outliers. I think of the trans people that I knew in college that didn't have any skeletons in their closet, that didn't hurt anybody, that kept to themselves. I think of someone who is actually very mentally ill, who I knew was mentally ill growing up because they had an eating disorder and they were a very feminine boy, yes, but now they are a trans woman. But they had serious mental issues. Like they were so obsessed with their weight that they would starve themselves and then run 2 miles every day and then have a stash of candy under the bed that they would just smell and not eat. Like, obviously a very mentally messed up person, and them starving themselves so much because of, and you know, it's a very feminine trait to be so body dysmorphic about your weight, right? It's more of a feminine trait, I would argue. Now they're a trans woman, but because of starving themselves so much, I don't exactly know what it's called, but they have some kind of nerve damage where they can't play drums anymore. And it's really sad.
I don't know why we don't just say it. Transgenderism is untreated mental illness. It does not invalidate them as humans. It means they need special care. I don't mean special care as in catering to your babyish, childish whims. Mm-hmm. I mean special care as in you have a mental illness and you need to be treated as if you had any other mental illness in whatever medically appropriate ways existed to do so. Not to be coddled and pampered and told that everything you're saying is correct and okay, because we don't do that to mentally ill people on the average.
It's becoming more average now, and now they're saying that catering to their needs is gender affirming care. Now they're saying that all of this stuff is appropriate procedures. That's the problem.
How? Again, the logic is so simple. We don't do that for people with clinical depression. So why is transgenderism, why is that exempt? Why do we say that mental illness could just go unchecked? Why don't we medicate those people? You know,
we do.
Why is it the kind of thing where it's like we just allow it and accept it, and we don't try to make the people change? We don't try to make the people evaluate the negative aspects of their lifestyles and their way of being and say like, hey, these things that you do, these ways that you think, these actions that you take for yourself are actually destructive to you in genetic, biological, hormonal ways. It's destructive. Why don't we do that?
Bigotry.
Oh, yeah, I'm just such a bigot because I clearly don't care about the state of humanity at all. I don't care. I definitely don't care about people.
Talk about leaving a better planet for our kids. How about leaving better kids for our planet?
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a Tom McDonald quote. People don't care what's going to go on in 20 years. Everyone's so freaking narcissistic. They're not thinking in the future. It's all now.
They can't think more than 8 seconds at a time.
Exactly. You are, yeah, 100%. They can't think more than 8 seconds at a time. So true. Oh, cool. I can use feminism to influence public schools. That sounds like a great idea. People talk about how conservative people need to be more open-minded. I would argue that the left is not open-minded. I would argue that they'll just preach open-mindedness, but then completely disregard any opinion that's not their own.
Well, part of being open-minded is considering the possibility that you're wrong.
Yep.
Like, one argument I've heard in that regard is, well, if I am wrong, what's the harm in it? That's a lot of harm, because you are potentially having people do surgeries and operations on themselves that could damage them permanently in the name of just saying, oh, they're mentally ill, no big deal. Let's just see what happens. What's the worst that could happen?
Or the people that are just so confident that messing with children's normal growth system is going to be better for them in the long run. How dare you assume that you know what's best for that child, or how dare you assume that the child knows what's best for it? And of course,
how dare you assume that child's gender?
Exactly.
I know, right? It's amazing what happens when you turn the argument back around, right?
I'm not the one assuming their gender. They're just telling me what they really believe their gender is with my help affirming it.
Uh-huh.
I'm just giving them the option. Did you see the tweet? YouTube Kids is really pushing the LGBT thing hard. For example, one of the videos recommended in the YouTube Kids is teaching children how to consent.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm sure you're just being a bigot if you think anything's wrong.
We should be teaching 9-year-olds to consent, Ellie. What's wrong with you? What if they develop early? What are you going to do about a 10-year-old that decides that he wants to try these things out? And what if 26-year-old man who's just conveniently gay and is going to show him what he wants to know? You know, how could you say that 10-year-old can't consent? What's wrong with you?
Any of you freaks who may be watching this, I don't care what you think you're trying to do to help. It is perversions. Children are going to discover their bodies on their own time with other children their age. Teenagers are going to figure that stuff out. People have been figuring it out all by themselves for millennia. They don't need help from adults to figure it out. I didn't need help from an adult to figure out my sexuality, and I sure as hell did not need any gender affirming care back when I was in shambles over my overdeveloped breasts at a young age. And people will die and the blood will be on your hands because you wanted gender affirming care. You wanted to affirm their gender more than you valued their health as an adult. Kids play pretend. Kids play cops and robbers. It doesn't mean that you teach them how to hold up a bank. You should not feed into children's whims, their imaginary whims. It's narcissism and perversions. So you're either one of the two. If you advocate for this, you are either a narcissist or a pervert.
Or both.
Or both. Or I'll give a third option. So you're either a pervert, narcissistic, or really fucking stupid. We shouldn't have stupid people deciding the fate of children. And if you're a parent and you're okay with this, what the fuck?
Stop fighting to prevent men from getting alimony and start thinking about whether or not you have the credentials mentally to have a child.
Why would you create a child and watch them destroy themselves from the inside out with your help? You are not being a good parent like you think you are. You are hurting them. And yes, they're going to scream and cry and they'll have tantrums about it because children don't grow up anymore. Children are babied. If you teach kids to get whatever they want at such a young age, even to the point of cosmetic surgery, life-altering surgeries, then you are teaching that child that they can just play victim and get whatever they want. And one day, they're going to actually be a victim and they won't be able to help themselves. You're creating weak humans.
Yeah, but women don't matter anymore. Women are usurped.
People skin grafting to make an abomination between their legs. Women losing their hair and getting fat and dying by 40.
Women don't matter because trans women are replacing them. Who cares if a woman becomes a trans man and hates it and goes back to being a woman? The trans women have come to take their place. Like, what was that thing we saw earlier? It said trans women are the future. Boys, straight boys, get used to it. That's talking to me saying you're not going to be able to get a girlfriend. You're going to have to date a trans woman.
Ugh. Horrible.
That's a challenge because that's a man challenging me.
That's
a
true.
Man challenging my sexuality. Bring it on, bud.
That's true, actually. I haven't thought of it like that. Men challenge each other, right? So a trans woman who is actually a biological man is challenging another biological man, saying that they have to accept them as a preference.
What is that? That's almost like sexual coercion.
Women, we need to stand together. Get the fuck over this competition, this competitive bias. Because guess what? Deep-rooted, you won't like me saying this, but deep-rooted, we compete over men because we want the best man as a partner. Well, now other men are trying to take those men
by challenging us.
Yep. So instead of competing with other women for men, now you're literally competing with men for men with these designer plastic surgeries. Also, ladies, if you're listening, do not believe that propaganda bull. Do not let it make you feel inferior because we are disempowered right now. If women don't band together against this, we're just doomed. Do you get it, ladies? It doesn't matter if you're bisexual or whatever. Biological women are the next metaphorical white straight male. We are the ones that are being attacked next. It's okay to have friends who are trans, but you need to learn to look at the red flags. And those people, if they're really your friends, you need to tell them they need help. If they're your friends, if you really care about those trans people, you're going to be pretty upset when they die before the age of 40 from medical complications. You don't want to talk about that. Would you take a person seriously if they refer to a woman as a chest feeding, birthing person? Like, are you kidding me? I am so much more than how my body inherently works.
Well, and that's the irony, right? Trans people want to be accepted for the body differences, right? They want to be accepted in spite of that, but they want you to reduce yourself down to just being a chest feeding person, and you qualify into this like de-individualized criteria they put you in. Like, when they want to be accepted in spite of their physiology, right? Incredibly ironic.
It's insane. And there's this term that I learned from Marcus Dibb, who is a trans content creator who I really appreciate. He's super cool. He talks about something called self-ID and is against self-ID, which is what all these fake trans people who
want to take advantage of people are doing, right? They are self-identifying, meaning that it doesn't matter if society identifies them as that gender, as long as they identify as a gender. Integration is important. And if you talk to a real trans person, they will tell you that gender dysphoria comes from a place of feeling like they need to integrate as that gender. So the people that are pretending, the people that are saying that I don't need to integrate, the people that are saying that I don't need to do anything to change my appearance or, change how I act to integrate as this other gender, those are the people that are self-IDing, and it's just narcissism. If real trans people didn't believe in this quote unquote gender binary, they wouldn't be trans in the first place because they wouldn't have anything to transition to. There would be no reason to transition. You'd be transitioning to what then if there was no gender binary? And so that's the argument.
Why are you taking like feminine hormone pills as a man if you want to be a woman? If like gender is a spectrum, like why is all of the medical and biological treatment based on masculine or feminine traits? You don't have neutral traits. You don't say, hey, give me the hormone pill that makes me more gender neutral. You say, give me the hormone pill that makes me more like a woman or more like a man. So like you can't say that the gender binary doesn't exist when the entirety of your transition is based upon being more like one or the other.
This whole thing, it's amplifying stereotypes of women that these people have perceived that are woman traits. But the fact that these people are now being threatening and telling women that we should think about ourselves or that we should rethink ourselves or what our experiences should be, and other biological women are doing it too. Biological women are gaslighting other biological women for being uncomfortable with this. It's outrageous and ridiculous. It's like the feelings of these posers are more important than objective reality. It's interesting because when it comes to like chest feeding person and that kind of thing, like the men, they're not being reduced down to semen producing person.
Right.
You're not oppressed if you can chase clout at the expense of biological women. And, maybe no one really cared and left them alone when trans people were starting to integrate into society and they felt like they had to make problems to get attention. I don't know, but it is extremely dangerous and it is proving itself to be, because like it is kind of sliding into very dangerous territory of these people that are hiding within the trans movement. Obviously, not every trans person is a bad person. There are plenty of good, level-headed, base trans people. And definitely not every trans person, just like not every LGBT person or not every straight white male is a predator. But we have to acknowledge that this whole movement opens people up to being victims to predatory behavior. As women, we are now becoming an object. We are still an object, even though we have been fighting to not be an object for so long. It's like we're a utility and we're being forced to accept ourselves out of existence. Acceptance and tolerance is getting out of control. And if it hadn't gotten to the point of being so politically advantageous to be predatory towards children, we wouldn't be fighting back in the first place, because no one actually cared before. But it's classist to think you should be more desirable to straight men than biological women. And let's talk about all of the dangerous situations that people can get into. For example, massage therapists, or more like personal types of care like that.
I think that one of the most critical parts of this whole trans movement thing is that the trans community needs to be willing to be dialed back when they step out of line, just like everyone else is. The so many people in culture today are like, oh, limit the influence of like white people, limit the power of men. Well, these marginalized groups need to realize that at a certain point, the things that they're asking for are disproportionate, and I think that they need to be open to realizing that like it's not necessarily equitable. That not everything they're asking for is equitable. Some things they're asking for are legitimately unfair and more than what other people are asking for, like being able to with impunity be able to affect laws, like make laws that affect everyone when you're a small percentage of the population, things like that. It's just I think that they have to be willing to accept that there is a such thing as too far, and just because you're a marginalized group does not mean you have carte blanche to do and have everything. And I know the counter argument is we just want to live, we just want to live. I still want to see concrete evidence that you're not getting to live. Like, I want to see that. Show me evidence that you're not getting to live. The only anti-trans laws that I get behind are the ones that say don't do it to kids. Like everything else, like the things that say don't do it to kids are the ones that I get behind. I don't care about like anything that prevents an adult from having their rights. Like, I'm not for that. But like, children don't have rights. Like, children don't have rights, and I think that's really hard for people to understand. Is that if you're a minor, you don't have rights.
Yeah, I mean, with these narcissistic children raised by narcissistic parents, the thought of not only do they not know how to discipline their kids, but the thought of, you know, them understanding that they don't have rights is just heresy. I mean, it's not about fighting for rights. It's about fighting for clout. Everyone's narcissistic little clout chasers these days. And they'll project on anybody with real, you know, value to society as being clout chasers. You know, they'll do anything outlandish, ridiculous, outrageous for attention. And then we'll just project back onto people who are actually contributing real, like, educational or beneficial content to society. They'll just project at them saying those are the clout chasers, to not be trusted, turf, whatever. I mean, obviously all social media is a problem, but TikTok by itself is a huge contributor to the trans epidemic.
It's not an epidemic, Ellie. That's bigotry.
What's worse, calling it epidemic or a trend?
That's all bigotry. Straight guys, get used to it. Trans women are the future. Just get ready to learn to suck dick. Cis women aren't going to want you. Besides, why would you want a cis woman anyway when we've got that $30,000 coochie?
Yeah, I mean, if algorithms weren't affirming people, young children, in their beliefs, then we wouldn't have so many people who are obsessed with the idea. Like, TikTok makes you brainwashed, and it makes you think about what it wants you to think about. It does manipulate your brain, and I believe that TikTok, and therefore China, is a huge contributing factor to the mental illness in America. So I think a start for all of these confused children who think that they're trans, the step one is to delete TikTok and all the social media off their phone, really. But that's not going to happen.
I updated my phone. I have a Xiaomi, by the way, which is a Chinese phone. It doesn't update, and it randomly installed TikTok on my phone again when it updated.
Really?
Yeah, I installed it, but I just opened the app just for the hell of it, and sure enough, like, I haven't been on TikTok in forever. When I pull up TikTok, all I get is like booty girls. That's it.
Wow. Because it knows your stats, right? It knows that you're a white straight male in a certain age range, so it's trying to control you through your hindbrain.
Yeah, I uninstalled it immediately, but yeah, I mean, like, you know, for a while there, I was getting all sorts of things that made me mad and stuff. Now I'm just getting girls shaking their asses and just trying to draw me in. Like, it's trying to be like, oh, you're a dude, you're gonna like this. Watch.
Really messed up. It is a terrible, evil app. It really is. I'm deleting it right now off my phone. I forgot that I had it on my phone.
Yeah, the fact that it reinstalled itself without my consent is really weird.
It's not worth having on your phone. Delete TikTok off your phone. Delete Facebook off your phone. Delete anything that listens to you all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the advice that I would have for parents or anybody who is watching this video when it's done. First step is just delete social media off your phone, at least. We're also obsessed with technology. You know, our lives are just so intertwined with it. So I understand, like, asking anybody to just, like, delete their accounts is kind of absurd at this point. Especially, you know, you're watching this on social media sites, technically, right? So what I like to do is, like I said, I deleted Facebook off of my phone completely. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is a lizard. Said it once, I'll say it a million times. So I can only look at social media on my computer. So it's not on my phone, so I can't look at it as soon as I wake up, right before I go to sleep. That does get to you. You know, if you only see that stuff when you're on your PC, you can kind of think about it more as work. Just don't let it take over your life. Don't let this brainwash you. I mean, odds are if you made it this far into the video, you're probably not brainwashed. The people that need to watch things to be educated and the ones that really need to change their minds, they're the ones that left 30 seconds in because I made a joke about men being women. They jump to conclusions and they won't listen because they are so comfortable in denial. Covering their eyes and ears. La 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 la. I can't hear you. I can't see you. You don't exist. Bigot, bigot, bigot. Transphobe, bigotry. Don't make me think about my own choices. Don't make me think that I could be wrong. It's a hard pill to swallow. I've been wrong plenty of times, but people are more willing to be open to people who admit they're wrong and join the side of truth than those who deny truth and reality and fight for delusions of society.
So maybe the bigotry against trans people isn't what they say it is. Maybe the thing they perceive as bigotry isn't actually bigotry.
Yeah, there were jokes about it and in the media and stuff like that, but like trans people have been around for a long time. It has been LGBT for years.
Yep.
So people have noticed and understood that trans people exist, but it's only recently since the addiction to Big Daddy Pharma that all of the children are now becoming trans. And now all of these predators are coming out as trans because they want to avoid punishment for the crimes that they're committing. Maybe in the very beginning, before our generation, it was wild to think about. But you know, when the trans activists say like, oh, trans has been around a long time, that's not necessarily untrue. It's just now it's become a trend because of TikTok and the mental illness epidemic after the pandemic. It's not like trans people weren't acknowledged and accepted already. That's the thing. Is that they were.
There's never been any takeaway of trans rights. No one's ever taken the rights away from trans people, ever. Yeah, gay people, there's been a lot of fighting over gay marriage, yes. But, like, the trans people never had anything like that happening. The people just kind of like, well, you guys are weird, and they left it at that. Because you haven't seen trans people come out saying, I want the right to call myself a woman. No one's ever said you're not allowed to do that. Like, there's never been any public thing of, like trans people shouldn't exist. You know, now.
Well, I mean, trans are part of the LGBT, so they kind of fought with the gay marriage thing.
Well, yeah, but what's happened now is they've been pulled into this in a different context from the LGB people. Like they're in it for a different reason, and they're drawing attention to themselves a lot more negatively than they would have if they just left things how they were. I know there's this whole like suicidality rate or whatever, but again, like I'm not convinced that that's not just mental illness causing them to do that. You know, and then this whole like it needs to happen to children. Like that's a whole different ballgame. We're not talking about the rights of adults anymore. We're talking about encroaching on children now.
And that's what makes it so scary. And that is why people are fighting it in the first place. That's really where it all went down, because before no one cared about trans people. After gay people were accepted and we had Pride Month and Pride parades and all that fun stuff in the 2010s, the 2000s and the 2010s, like everything was hunky-dory. The gays had their right to vote and their right for marriage and everything was fine until people started transing the kids. And now we have this.
Yeah, now we have a problem.
There was no problem before this.
And that's why people have become such alarmists, because now children are being targeted, and that's just not okay. Hands off the kids in every way. And
I met a trans girl earlier, but she's 16, so her and I obviously don't align on everything. I don't agree that she should be taking hormones when she's only 16 years old. But I'm not saying that, some trans kids are not level-headed human beings who deserve to be happy in their own skin. Of course, it's difficult because there are people who just are trying to be better versions of themselves. When I was even in my early 20s, my mid 20s, I was still to the point where I'm just like, I would never want to have kids. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. But now that I'm 30, I am rethinking that. So these kids aren't really going to definitively know if they want to have children, or if they seriously screwed up their bodies until it's too late, right? And so that is the whole argument of waiting till you're 18 at least, which, I mean, I still was dumb at 18. I still didn't know, but I mean, it's better than nothing. And there are trans people that have come out about being, for example, First Nation Native Americans who very much regret their transition now because they literally, through infertility of hormones, they have halted their bloodline. The one from Alberta, they'll never be able to share their heritage through youth. And that's something that these kids who are transitioning just cannot comprehend. And they're not supposed to, right? Kids aren't supposed to be worried about whether they want to have children one day. This whole trans thing is making children grow up too early, because at the end of the day, the reason why it's pedophilic, the reason why it is destructive towards children is because you are directly influencing them sexually, no matter how you want to slice and dice it. Hormones are sex hormones. Messing with it means that you're messing with their sexual biology, which means that now adults have to be involved in the sexual growth of children, because the children can't get hormones from other children. The children can't and shouldn't just discuss these changes with each other. So that means that they need to discuss with adults. And there's so many broken families and broken homes and parents who had these children, who birthed them, these mothers who gave their bodies for their children. They're watching their children destroy themselves from the inside out, and it hurts them. So they don't like it. So the kids don't have an open discussion and relationship with their parents on average over this stuff. So they go to adults who they are not related to continue treatment and talk about sex with adults that are not their family. Especially with like the thing that came out from PragerU about YouTube kids advertising consent to children ages, I think it was 9 to 11 or 9 to 12 or something like that. There's a difference between consent and boundaries. Consent is for adults and boundaries are for children. Not just any adult can teach a child boundaries either, especially not consent, right? Consent is for adults, but a child can learn boundaries from their parents. And that is the first step. That is an important step, because if you skip boundaries for consent, then they don't learn healthy boundaries, and people can step over those boundaries in order to get quote unquote consent from kids. You can't just skip that step. You can't just skip over boundaries into teaching children consent. And someone could argue, oh, it's semantics. Well, you know, the left is always the one that fights over semantics here. This is my fight over semantics, okay? Consent is for adults. Boundaries are for children. Boundaries are for adults too. Don't get me wrong, but you learn boundaries as children. At least you should. And not by random people on the internet.
I think that there's a certain degree that children can't consent no matter how much they're educated on something. There has to be a point to where you can be determined to be responsible for your decisions. The way I see it is that if a kid can't be held as, you know, for like a felony for something they do as a child, the argument is that the child's brain is not developed enough to be able to make and understand the implications of the decision. So if we can't try children for felonies and things, they do things like that wrong, then how could we give someone of the same age the authority or the autonomy to make a permanently life-altering decision that has ramifications that they aren't even physiologically aware of understanding? Like, if the argument is that a kid can't consent, then that should go into everything. That should tie into anything that requires an adult to make like an adult decision, you know, like something that's considered an adult decision.
Which is why it's suspicious that they are trying to advertise children and to learn what consent is versus what boundaries are. That is a red flag.
Because children are taught also to trust adults. So if you teach a child what consent is, if an adult is able to convince them to trust the adult, then the child will think, well, yeah, I can consent because it's an adult and it's safe to be talked to adults, and I can make this decision of consenting because I learned what consenting is, and I'm growing up. I can consent. But yeah, I think boundaries are much more important.
It's interesting because our generation, the millennial generation, it's the ones who are in their 30s and all that, they're trying to like be teenagers again. They're trying to regress so hard. They're just so immature. And then the teenagers, the Gen Zers and the younger generation, they're trying to grow up so fast that they literally are altering their bodies at a young age with hormones. Like, what is going on? Oh yeah, mental illness, right. And you can try to say, oh, well, it's not a sexual thing. It's just about them finding their identity and blah, blah, blah. No, just think about it logically for a moment. It all has to do with their sexual advancement as children into adulthood. It's about their hormone production. That is sexual. So that's why it's pedophilic. And that's why you shouldn't trans the kids. When they're adults, that's fine. And no one cared. Just like nobody cared about gay people anymore. They're going to be your people who are, you know, evangelical Christians who say gay equals hell. But I mean, you guys don't care about hell anyway. The masses, society was accepting of trans people just fine. It was when children got involved that all this started happening. Even though I'm technically in the LGBT, no one gives a crap because I'm not trans. That's my point, is that how can you say that you're oppressed when the only people who can advocate for based reality, logical change in this situation is trans people who are coming out and saying, no, this is wrong. That's why we need Blair White and Marcus and people like that. Because our opinions, my opinion, my brother's opinions don't matter on the average. What's crazy also is that the extremist trans activists, they're taking everything out of the book that was used against other races, that was used against women. They use the same tactics. It's like almost the same verbiage too. Like, you're a terrible person if you think that blah, 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 blah. And then if someone tries to say, well, I'm not a transphobe, but don't trans the kids. It's the same. They take it as the same as saying, well, I'm not a racist, but proportionality. And they're fighting like women fought for rights, except they're fighting to take rights away from women. It is the most backwards I have ever experienced in my entire life. And yeah, I'm pretty sick of it. And a lot of people feel this way, but they're too afraid to say anything because they think they'll lose their jobs. Because people like Dylan Mulvaney say things like, I'm concerned for you people talking like this because soon transphobia on the internet won't be as tolerated. And it would be so sad if these tweets come back at you later. Keep people afraid. Unbelievable. You know, what if gender dysphoria is actually just body dysphoria? I mean, most of these cases anyway. There are some people who actually have gender dysphoria, and those people are trans people, and those people are valid and all that good stuff. Then they deserve to live life as whatever because they're not hurting anybody else. And for the most part, I don't mind respecting your pronouns as long as you don't hurt anybody and as long as you try your best to integrate. But I think that a lot of these people, if they just had some psychiatric treatment for a few years, then maybe they might discover that it's really just body dysphoria, because every teenager has a hard time with puberty, every single one of them. So if we're going to call it gender dysphoria every time that a teenager has a hard time with their hormonal development, then that is literally just destroying the youth, which is what we are seeing today. So that is why I am steadfast on the side of not transing kids and letting them choose when they're 18. And I know there are young people who don't want to hear that because they think, oh, well, they need to catch it early so they can be that person by the time they're an adult. But like, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can be what you want to be later. If you're meant to be the opposite gender, then you will still be just as much in that headspace when you turn 18 than when you are 16.
Spoken like a true bigot.
Don't turn yourself into a slave to Daddy Pharma. Give your body a chance to develop naturally, and give yourself a chance to love yourself in your own body and explore your sexuality as an adult in the body that you were given from nature. Thank you everybody for joining us for this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. We will talk to you later.
Yeah, the whole phrase I always heard as a kid is letting the crazy people run the asylum. Very apt statement to modern society.
Hope you learned something.